Okay, so here we have Pulsar anti-vibration pier. A couple of notes about the pier. Obviously solid steel construction. We have our welded fins and base plate. Owl's nest for access to bolts. We also have a cable route through to a hole at the bottom. There's also a hole in the very bottom of the pier, so you could run cables up through your base if that was your intention. Essentially the way these work is they're a solid construction, so we don't need levelling bolts and bits of threaded rod. We want to plug our telescope mount into the base as solid as we can. We work on the assumption that your pier base is largely level, and you can shim it if need be, but the idea is we're as solid as possible. Once we've chemically resined our bolts into the floor, tighten them after 24 hours, and it energises the welds on the pier and stops any vibration and any ring. That's all you should really need for a pier. We don't need lots of adjustments. We want it as solid as possible. Standard finish is black spray. We don't powder coat generally, although we can do, but this just makes it easy to keep it looking nice without chips and dings. Okay, with your pier you will also need a pier adapter plate for whichever mount you intend to mount on the pier. This is the Pulsar multi-pier adapter plate. It takes EQ6s, HEQ5s, all the various derivatives and the CGXLs, etc., but other pier plates are available for other mounts. Fixes to the top of the pier just by 3 M8 bolts in this instance, and we use this pier plate to work out where north is when we come to orient the pier in the observatory, which we'll come to shortly. Right, we're now ready to install our pier. Before we bring the pier into the observatory, we're going to mark a couple of reference points so that the steel pier doesn't affect the compass. So what we're going to do first is measure the dead centre of the dome, and by doing this we're going to take from each of the wall seams, measure across and marking our centre point with a pencil. Once we have our centre point, which we pretend is there, we then have a straight edge and our compass. And you can either use a traditional compass or your phone, either one, but we want to get a good long reference line longer than the pier base. So we're going to mark a line, that way we can see when the pier's in place, north and south. Now, depending on the base plate diameter of your pier, ours is about 380 millimetres, yours may vary if it's not one of ours, we will then mark various exit points of our pier base using our reference point, and then typically if you have a larger equatorial mount, we will want to move the pier back approximately 50 millimetres to the south to give us an offset for our equatorial mount. Once you've marked that, we're now ready to fit the pier. Okay, we've marked our various reference points. We have a north-south line in the middle. Now it's time to fit our pier. We've fitted our pier plate, as this will give us the north-south orientation for the pier itself in relation to the mount. So by line of sight, we're going to mark our centre and as pin to the north. We've got our reference marks on the base, as already pointed out. And what we're going to do then is just move the pier approximately 50 mil to the south for an equatorial mount. It gives us a good offset and clearance. And there's no specific amount, but 50 mil works for us. If you have an altazimuth mount, you can leave it dead centre, but we offset for equatorial mounts. Once we've got it south and even to our marks, we're then ready to mark and drill the pier base to attach the pier properly. Okay, now we've marked the position of our pier, it's time to drill the holes, use the chemical resin to fix it. Note about the chemical resin, if it's cold, it's worth putting it in a bowl of warm water before you start, which will help mixing and squeezing it out when we come to actually use it. We know our pier is positioned, so we're going to take an SDS drill, and this is the same 14mm drill bit we used to anchor the walls earlier. And we're just going to spot each hole on the pier base. Once we've done that, we'll move the pier out of the way and drill to the depth of the drill bit in the 14mm. Once we've done that, move over to a 22mm SDS bit and follow our pilot holes down. We want to drill the hole deeper than the threaded rod if possible, and it's worth bracing the drill with your knees and your legs so that it doesn't kick out and damage your wrists. Once we've drilled the holes, had a quick clean up, hoover, we're then going to come back, put our pier in place Squeeze the resin down to just below the top of the surface, and then insert our threaded rod, working it down as it goes to get any air out, and then leave all three for 24 hours for the resin to set. Once the resin is set, we come out with an adjustable spanner, nip up each bolt. Hasn't got to be super tight, just enough to stop the pier being able to move and give a good solid connection, and then your pier's done.